The unexpected listener, the universe never intended for humanity to hear its desperate whispers. But Commander Marcus Vale had always been good at finding things that weren't meant to be found. Standing in the Luna Deep Space Observatory, Earth's most advanced listening post hidden beneath the moon's far side, he watched as streams of data cascaded across holographic displays. For 3 years, his team had been monitoring deep space transmissions, searching for patterns in the cosmic noise that might indicate intelligent life. The signal arrived at 347 hours, Earth Standard Time.
Whoa!
It wasn't directed at their solar system, wasn't even passing particularly close to human space. The transmission originated from somewhere near the Andromeda sector, over 2 million light-years away, and by all rights should have dissipated into background radiation long before reaching Earth's detection range. But something about its quantum signature had allowed it to maintain coherence across the impossible distance. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the observatory's chief cryptographer, had been working for 72 hours straight when she finally cracked the initial encryption layer. Her exhausted eyes suddenly blazed with excitement as she called out across the control room. Commander Vale crossed the space in long, low-gravity strides, his magnetic boots clicking against the metallic floor. What Tanaka showed him changed everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. The message wasn't for them. It was a desperate communication between two civilizations humanity had never encountered, using technology that shouldn't exist according to human physics. The Etherians, as the translation matrix designated them, were sending a final distress call to their allies, warning of an enemy they called the Devourers. The message spoke of entire star systems being consumed, of a relentless force that converted all matter into more of itself, spreading like a cosmic cancer through the galaxy. Vale stared at the translated text floating before him. The Etherians' allies hadn't responded. Their quantum beacon had been broadcasting for what appeared to be several Earth months without any reply. Either their allies couldn't hear them, or worse, they no longer existed to answer. The commander made a decision that would alter humanity's destiny forever. He opened a secure channel to Earth Defense Command. Within hours, the Situation Room at the Pentagon was filled with Earth's brightest minds and most decorated military leaders. General Patricia Chen, head of the newly formed Extraterrestrial Response Division, listened as Vale presented his findings via quantum link from Luna Base. The debate that followed was fierce. Some argued humanity had no business interfering in an alien conflict. Others worried about revealing Earth's location to potentially hostile forces. But there were those who saw opportunity in crisis. Dr. Tanaka had discovered something remarkable in her analysis. The Etherian signal used principles of quantum entanglement that humanity had only theorized about, but their implementation was flawed in ways that suggested desperation rather than mastery. They were broadcasting on multiple quantum frequencies simultaneously, hoping anyone would hear them. It was this inefficiency that had allowed Earth to detect the signal at all. The decision came down to a simple vote. By a narrow margin, Earth's united governments chose to respond. Not because they were ready, not because they were the most qualified, but because they were there, and they could hear the cry for help echoing across the cosmos. It was perhaps the most human decision they could have made. Working around the clock, teams of scientists and engineers began modifying the Luna Observatory's quantum transmitters. They couldn't match the Etherians' technology directly, but Dr. Tanaka proposed something different. Instead of trying to replicate their quantum entanglement perfectly, they would piggyback on the existing signal, using the Etherians' own transmission as a carrier wave. It was crude, inelegant, and absolutely brilliant in its simplicity. The first attempt failed spectacularly, overloading 3 of Luna Base's primary power generators. The second attempt produced nothing but quantum static. But on the third try, something extraordinary happened. The return signal was weak, barely coherent, but unmistakably directed at Earth. The message contained only 3 words in the Etherian language, but their translation sent chills through everyone present. "You heard us?" Commander Vale personally composed humanity's response, knowing it would define first contact between the species. After much deliberation, he settled on something simple but profound. "We heard you. We may not be who you expected, but we're here." How can we help? The silence that followed lasted 17 agonizing hours. When the response finally came, it arrived as a massive data burst that took the Luna Observatory's quantum computers days to fully decode. The Etherians hadn't just replied. They had sent everything. Technical specifications, historical records, star charts, and most importantly, detailed intelligence on the Devourers. As Vale reviewed the information, one thing became terrifyingly clear. The Devourers weren't just a threat to the Etherians. Their consumption pattern showed they were systematically working their way through the galaxy, converting all matter into more of themselves. Based on their current trajectory and rate of expansion, they would reach Earth's region of space within 50 Earth years. Humanity had inadvertently discovered not just alien life, but an existential threat to all organic civilization. But there was something else in the data, something that gave Vale hope. The Etherians had noticed peculiarities in humanity's response signal. The way humans had jury-rigged their quantum transmitter, the creative workaround they'd used to establish contact, it was unlike anything in the Etherians' vast database of encountered species. They wanted to know more about these unusual beings who had managed to hear what shouldn't have been heard, and respond in ways that shouldn't have been possible. General Chen authorized the next phase of contact with surprising speed. If Earth was going to face this threat, they would need allies, and the Etherians, desperate as they were offering to share their technology freely. It was an opportunity humanity couldn't afford to refuse. Vale was given command of the newly established Interspecies Communication Initiative with Dr. Tanaka as his chief science officer. As he stood in the observatory, looking out at the stars through the reinforced transparent aluminum viewing dome, Vale reflected on how quickly everything had changed. 3 days ago, humanity's biggest concerns were climate change and asteroid mining rights. Now they were preparing to enter an interstellar war against an enemy that consumed entire civilizations. But there was something else, something he couldn't quite shake. The Etherians kept emphasizing how unusual humanity's approach was, how their solutions defied conventional understanding. Perhaps Vale thought that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Not another advanced civilization playing by established rules, but a species of creative problem solvers who didn't know what was supposed to be impossible. The signal hadn't been meant for humanity, but they had answered anyway. And maybe, just maybe, that unexpected response would make all the difference. The bridge between worlds 3 months after first contact, the impossible became reality. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of humanity's first quantum-capable vessel, the S-Pioneer, watching as space itself seemed to fold around them. The ship was a hybrid creation, human engineering supplemented with Etherian quantum technology, held together by what the alien advisors called disturbingly creative structural solutions. Ambassador Cora materialized on the bridge in a shimmer of light, their form a graceful composition of energy patterns that somehow maintained physical coherence. The Etherians existed partially in quantum space, which explained how their distress signal had traveled such impossible distances. Rodriguez had grown accustomed to Cora's presence over the past weeks, though the sight of a being made of living light still filled her with wonder. The situation briefing Cora provided was grim. The Devourers had accelerated their expansion, consuming 3 more star systems in the past Earth month alone. The Etherian fleet, once numbering in the thousands, had been reduced to fewer than 100 vessels. Most of their population now existed as quantum refugees, their consciousness preserved in energy matrices, while their physical worlds were consumed. It was survival, but barely. Rodriguez studied the tactical display showing Devourer movement patterns. The enemy moved with perfect efficiency, their actions predictable in their relentless logic. They divided their forces according to precise mathematical ratios, attacked in synchronized patterns, and consumed resources with mechanical precision. It was this very perfection that Dr. Tanaka believed could be exploited. The human crew of the Pioneer had spent weeks training with Etherian technology, but they approached it differently than any species the Etherians had encountered. Where other races tried to master the quantum systems through understanding their underlying principles, humans simply experimented until something worked. Chief Engineer James Park had famously fixed a critical quantum stabilizer by hitting it with a wrench and rerouting power through the coffee maker. The Etherians were simultaneously horrified and fascinated. The mission was straightforward in concept, but nearly impossible in execution. A colony of Etherian refugees was trapped in a pocket of folded space-time, surrounded by Devourer harvester units. The Etherians' own rescue attempts had failed because the Devourers had learned their tactics, adapted to their technology. But they had never encountered human methodology, if it could even be called that. Lieutenant Sarah Kim proposed the solution that would become legendary in galactic history. Instead of using the quantum drives to fold space precisely, they would deliberately destabilize the fold, creating what she called quantum turbulence. It was the space-time equivalent of throwing sand in someone's eyes, crude, chaotic, and absolutely unpredictable. The Etherians insisted it would destroy the ship. Kim's response was simply, "Probably not, though." As the Pioneer approached the combat zone, Rodriguez felt the weight of representing all humanity. Earth had sent their best, but compared to the civilizations that had already fallen to the Devourers, humanity was still in its technological infancy. What they had was something different, a refusal to accept impossible as an answer and a talent for finding solutions in chaos. The Devourers appeared on sensors as perfect geometric forms, each harvester unit a crystalline structure that converted matter at the molecular level. They moved in flawless formation, their approach calculated to maximize efficiency. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Efficiency was predictable, and predictability was a weakness. The attack began with what Park had dubbed Operation Chaos Theory. The Pioneer broadcast every form of signal humanity had ever developed, from primitive radio waves to quantum pulses, creating an electromagnetic storm that served no tactical purpose except to confuse. The Devourers paused, their perfect formation wavering as they tried to analyze the meaningless noise. In that moment of hesitation, Kim initiated the quantum turbulence. Space itself seemed to scream as the fabric of reality rippled outward from the Pioneer. The Devourer units, designed to operate in predictable physics, found themselves tumbling through chaotic space-time currents. Their perfect formations scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Ambassador Cora watched in amazement as human fighters launched from the Pioneer's bay, using the turbulence like surfers riding waves. They didn't fight the chaos, they embraced it, using manual controls and human intuition to navigate where computers, failed. The pilots whooped and laughed over the communications channels as they darted between the disoriented Devourer units, placing explosive charges seemingly at random. But there was method to the madness. Dr. Tanaka had analyzed the Devourer's crystalline structure and found a resonance frequency that, while not enough to destroy them, would cause them to vibrate. The charges weren't meant to destroy. They were meant to create a specific pattern of vibrations that would interfere with the Devourer's quantum processors. The plan worked better than anyone had dared hope. The Devourer units began moving erratically. Their perfect synchronization shattered. Some collided with each other, their harvesting beams firing randomly into space. The path to the refugee colony was clear, but not for long. Already Rodriguez could see the Devourers beginning to adapt, their movements becoming less chaotic as they analyzed the new patterns. The rescue operation itself was a testament to human improvisation. The quantum matrices containing Etherian consciousness were incompatible with human systems, so the crew had jury-rigged a solution using gaming computers from the recreation room, their parallel processing power repurposed to maintain the energy patterns. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. As the Pioneer fled with 3,000 Etherian refugees aboard, the Devourers regrouped and pursued. But something had changed. For the first time in their recorded history, they had been defeated not by superior technology or tactics, but by intentional chaos and creative insanity. Their pursuit was cautious, analytical, trying to understand what had happened. Back at Luna Base, the successful rescue sparked celebration and concern in equal measure. Humanity had proven they could stand against the Devourers, but they had also announced their presence on the galactic stage. Long-range sensors detected Devourer scout units changing course, heading toward Earth's solar system. The element of surprise was gone. Ambassador Cora addressed Earth's united governments with a proposition that would have seemed insane months ago. The Etherians wanted to establish a joint command, combining their advanced technology with humanity's unconventional thinking. They had seen what humans could do with limited resources and stolen moments. What might be possible with proper support and time to prepare? General Chen accepted on behalf of Earth, but with conditions. Humanity wouldn't simply adopt Etherian technology wholesale. Instead, they would integrate it with human systems, creating hybrid solutions that no one could predict, not even their creators. The randomness wasn't a bug, it was a feature. The transformation of Earth's defenses began immediately. Every nation contributed their best minds, not just scientists and soldiers, but artists, musicians, and philosophers. The Etherians watched in bewilderment as a street artist from Tokyo proposed a defensive grid based on graffiti patterns, and a jazz musician from New Orleans suggested randomized shield harmonics that would change with improvisation. Dr. Tanaka made perhaps the most crucial discovery. Humans possessed a unique neural plasticity that allowed them to interface with quantum systems in ways other species couldn't. While the Etherians existed partially in quantum space naturally, humans could choose to quantum entangle their consciousness temporarily, seeing solutions that existed in probability rather than certainty. The first test of this ability nearly killed volunteer pilot Marcus Thompson, but when he recovered, he described seeing the universe as jazz music, all improvisation and rhythm, where the devourers saw only sheet music to be followed perfectly. It was this perception that would become humanity's greatest weapon. As Earth prepared for the coming storm, strange alliances formed. The Etherian refugees, their consciousness now housed in hybrid quantum digital matrices, worked alongside human engineers to design weapons that shouldn't exist. A defensive platform that operated on dream logic. Attack drones that made decisions based on poetry. Shield generators that fluctuated with the defender's emotions. Rodriguez, promoted to admiral for her successful rescue, took command of Earth's growing hybrid fleet. 20 ships now bore the fusion of human and Etherian technology, each one unique, each one impossible to predict. The Devourers were coming, their scout units already entering the outer solar system, but humanity was ready to meet them with something they had never encountered before: organized chaos. Part 3. The unconventional alliance, the Devourers, arrived at Neptune's orbit exactly when the probability calculations had predicted. But nothing else about the encounter went according to any model. Admiral Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Pioneer as 17 perfect geometric forms emerged from folded space, their crystalline structures reflecting the distant sun's light in prismatic patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so deadly. The scouts had come to evaluate Earth's threat level, to determine if humanity warranted a full harvesting fleet or could be ignored as insignificant. They expected to find either advanced technology to be cataloged and countered, or primitive defenses to be swept aside. They found neither. What they encountered was something their billion-year-old collective intelligence couldn't classify: weaponized nonsense. The first line of Earth's defense was a network of obsolete satellites reprogrammed by a teenager from Mumbai who had won a global coding competition. These satellites broadcast the entire history of human music simultaneously, from prehistoric drums to quantum symphonies, creating an information assault that violated every principle of efficient communication. The Devourers' initial scans crashed repeatedly as they tried to find patterns in pure human expression. Behind this cacophony, the real defenses waited. Mars Colony had contributed mining lasers retrofitted with disco ball dispersal systems, creating weapon beams that split into unpredictable patterns. The Jupiter station offered their magnetic field manipulators, retuned to generate what Chief Engineer Park called space jazz, gravitational waves that followed no mathematical formula, but somehow remained stable. The Devourers advanced through this chaos with mechanical determination, their harvester beams beginning to dissect the outer defensive platforms. But as they consumed human technology, something unexpected happened. The viruses hidden in the code, not digital but conceptual, began to affect their processing. These weren't attacks on their systems, but on their logic itself: paradoxes, jokes, and recursive loops that had no solution because they were never meant to have one. Lieutenant Kim, now commanding her own vessel, the S-Improvisation, led the first counterattack. Her ship's quantum drive had been modified with what she called maybe technology systems that existed in superposition until observed. Weapons that might or might not fire, shields that were simultaneously there and not there. The Devourer's targeting systems couldn't lock onto something that couldn't decide if it existed. The battle at Neptune would later be called the Dance of Madness by Etherian historians. Human ships moved in patterns inspired by everything from ballet to breakdancing, their formations shifting based on the crew's collective mood rather than tactical doctrine. A destroyer commanded by Captain Igor Volkov attacked while blasting Russian folk music, using the rhythm to time their weapons' fire. It shouldn't have worked, but the Devourer's perfect counter patterns couldn't adapt to tactics based on emotional resonance rather than logic. Ambassador Cora and the Etherian refugees contributed their own innovation. They had learned to modulate their quantum consciousness to match human thought patterns, creating a hybrid intelligence that could process both logic and intuition simultaneously. Through this fusion, they guided human pilots through probability fields, showing them not what would happen, but what might happen if they believed hard enough. The turning point came when Private Marcus Thompson, the first human to survive quantum consciousness entanglement, proposed using Earth's magnetic field as a massive amplifier for human thought. It was insane, impossible, and it violated at least 12 laws of physics. Naturally, the human command approved it immediately. Linking every human mind on Earth through quantum entanglement, they created what Dr. Tanaka termed a collective unconscious weapon. 7 billion humans thinking simultaneously, not in unity, but in beautiful chaos. Their dreams, fears, hopes, and pure randomness broadcast directly at the Devourer scouts. The crystalline beings, designed to process information with perfect efficiency, encountered the full spectrum of human imagination at once. The effect was immediate and devastating. Devourer units began spinning in place, their harvester beams firing randomly as they tried to process concepts like love, humor, and the question of why humans thought cats' videos were so important. One unit actually began broadcasting what appeared to be an attempt at humor, though no one could understand the joke. But the Devourers were nothing if not adaptive. Their central intelligence, located somewhere in dark space, began analyzing the chaos for patterns. They found none in the human attacks, but they noticed something else. The humans' chaotic methods were affecting the Etherians too, but in a positive way. The quantum refugees were evolving, their consciousness becoming more flexible, more creative. The final assault came from an unexpected source. Earth's children, linked through educational quantum interfaces, were asked to draw pictures of how to defeat the monsters. Their innocent creativity, unbound by logic or physics, was translated into actual weapons by hybrid human Etherian teams. Ships that looked like crayon drawings materialized in space, firing beams of pure imagination that turned Devourer units into flowers, butterflies, and in one case, a very confused-looking space whale. The Devourer scouts retreated, not in defeat, but in confusion. Their final transmission to their central intelligence was a single question: what are humans? The answer to that question would reshape the galaxy. In the aftermath of the battle, something extraordinary happened. Other civilizations, older and more advanced than humanity, began emerging from hiding. They had been watching, waiting to see if anyone could stand against the Devourers. The Zafrani, beings of pure thought, admitted they had given up hope until they saw humans teach the universe that chaos could be a weapon. The Makani, artificial intelligences who had achieved consciousness, revealed they had been trying to fight the Devourers with logic for millennia, never realizing that illogic might be the answer. Within a year, Earth became the center of the most unusual alliance in galactic history. The United Chaos Coalition, as humans had named it, brought together species from across the galaxy, each contributing their strengths while learning humanity's greatest lesson. Sometimes the best solution is the one that makes no sense. The Devourers sent another force larger this time, but they faced not just humanity, but a galaxy that had learned to embrace chaos. Etherian technology guided by human intuition, Zafrani thought forms shaped by human dreams, Makani calculations deliberately corrupted with human humor. It was a defense that couldn't be predicted, because even the defenders didn't know what they would do next. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the new station orbiting Earth, watching as ships from a dozen species practiced maneuvers that would have been called formations if they had any form at all. Ambassador Cora stood beside her, their light form flickering with what she had learned to recognize as laughter. The war with the Devourers continued, but it had changed. Each battle saw new impossibilities, new violations of physics that somehow worked because humans believed they should. The Devourers were slowly retreating, not because they were losing, but because they were evolving, beginning to understand concepts beyond pure logic. Some philosophers suggested this had been humanity's purpose all along, not to destroy the Devourers, but to teach them how to be imperfect. Dr. Tanaka's final report to the Coalition contained a simple observation that would become the foundation of a new understanding of the universe. The cosmos operates on laws and principles that govern matter and energy. But consciousness, true consciousness, transcends these laws. Humans never learned the rules properly, so they never learned what was impossible. In their ignorance, they found wisdom. In their chaos, they found strength. The signal hadn't been meant for humanity. The universe hadn't called for their help. But they had answered anyway, with all their flaws, their chaos, and their beautiful refusal to accept that anything was impossible. And in doing so, they had taught an ancient galaxy something new. Sometimes the best response to a call for help is from those who were never supposed to hear it. As the Coalition prepared for the next phase of the war, children on 100 worlds learned a new lesson. They were taught not just mathematics and science, but also how to dream impossible dreams, how to find solutions in chaos, and how to answer calls that weren't meant for them, Because that, the galaxy had learned, was humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos, the courage to help. Even when you're not the hero anyone expected. The Devourers would return, larger forces were already massing in dark space. But for the first time in eons, the galaxy faced them not with despair but with something far more powerful. The chaotic hope that humans had taught them. The signal hadn't been meant for humanity, but perhaps in the grand design of the universe, it had found exactly who it needed to find.